Hello and welcome to NewFilmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Filmmaker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and we're here at the Cambridge Los Angeles show in West Hollywood, and I'm here with Kristen with his movie, I Love New York. Let's take a look at the clip.
Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
First thing, when you're walking around the city, I mean like anywhere you're going around here, you need to think, see. Thinking like a New Yorker.
First time? No. I've been trying to play it off like I'm a tourist. Like I belong in the big city.
But you know, this is New York, so see, I was thinking, there's a couple of things I might be able to help you with, you know.
Thank you so much for your beautiful film, I Love New York, which I just love saying. For those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis of your film.
So I Love New York is about a savvy New Yorker who befriends a tourist and takes him on this fantastical journey to show him how to negotiate the pitfalls of New York.
Yeah.
How can he survive? Like it's the survival guide for any first timer, and it goes through a lot of ups and downs, and then there's a great twist at the end. So
It
be
really
careful
does.
of like who's the true hustler
Yeah.
in New York, and what's the angle. There's
Yeah.
always something behind what's really happening.
Yeah, and when you're a New Yorker, you've lived in New York, you certainly know these things. I love it. Having lived in New York myself, I completely fell in love with your film. I was like, I love New York, and I was like, yeah, you certainly reminded me of that. It's a beautiful story, and it is amazing because there are so many things. When you live in New York or you visit New York, there are different pitfalls. But where did the inspiration for you come for creating the story?
Well, I grew up right outside of New York, like pretty much over the bridge. Like
Yeah.
still in New York, but just like, so I felt like my entire life I was always like 1 foot in the door
Yeah.
as a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And like 1 foot out because people were like, you're a New Yorker. But and then like a really hardcore New Yorkers, it was like, you're not a New Yorker. Like, you're just
You're over
like,
the bridge.
yeah, you're just a little too far, you know what I mean? To like, to make it so. So I felt like from having that, I had this kind of outside, perspective of it. So I could be objective, but also had an incredible insight for like what it was.
Yeah.
So I felt like real like the hardcore New Yorkers couldn't see themselves or see these things.
Yeah.
I think at least in this particular way of seeing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like because it's everything is it's fantastical and it's like making fun of, but also it's like giving him a big kiss on the cheek at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's really funny of like how you can describe that sense of like I'm like like you want to smell your finger and like why am I, this is disgusting, why am I doing this, but I keep on doing it for some reason. And I feel like that's a lot of ways you can describe parts about New York. It's just like
so true.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
so
walking
true.
by 1,000 garbage bags on the side of the street and it smells terrible, but I love it, and like I miss
you're
the
right,
stench of the street sometimes. And people's like, well, and LA can get a little stinky too. And then it's kind of like, yeah, but it's not the same stench.
It's not the same stench. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I never thought about that. That's very, very true. I miss that stench right now. I really do. It's amazing, but there's so many things that make you love New York City, and I love how you did sort of capture the elements of like the pitfalls and the things, but even the pitfalls is part of the journey of being a New Yorker and going through, and you sort of have to go through them, like even being befriended. I've been in a situation where I was befriended, I thought someone was trying to help me with something, and I realized I was being robbed, and I was like, oh, just one of my little episodes in New York City. But even just orchestrating that into your film as well. Were these some of these personal experiences that you had, or did you kind of
I mean, some of them are definitely personal experiences, or and then I'd heard like different versions of these experiences from other people. So I incorporated my own personal experiences, other stories I've heard from the similar experiences to kind of like meld them together. And I did that for the most part. And then there was a surprising element of like a last final rewrite and polish to the script that I didn't really see coming whatsoever. So when I was casting the film, one thing I'd given every single person who came in. I mean, I think like 200 people came in and read.
Wow.
Like it was really, really kind of like
daunting
searching.
as a director to try and like find those people, isn't it?
Find those right people, and I gave them all the same exact like sheet. So everyone was reading the same thing, and it was this one verse that was like very kind of like hustly. And I was like, if you can do this, you can play any one of the characters. You can do it right. So they come in, they read that one, and then I'd ask people. It was like first time I started with like. I don't want to be rude, but it's like, do you have a day job? Like, at all? Like, yeah, I totally understand, the hustle of what it is.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, of course. And so what is it? What do you do? And they're like, oh, well, I sell cell phones. And it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to stand up now. And you need to sell me the phone.
Yeah.
I want to see how you sell me. I'm walking in. It's the last day of the financial quarter for you.
Yeah.
Your shop's going to close in 5 minutes, and you need this last sale to get that quota. Otherwise, your apartment's gone. And your 2 kids are like on the street with you. Like those are your stakes. So it's just like let's see it work. And every single person, I let them use their own personal experiences to try to hustle me and sell me at any way possible. And if they weren't trying hard enough, I'd be like, wow, you clearly don't care about your kids. You know what I mean? Who are like going to be on the street now. And they would like push harder. And some people were just like outrageously amazing. And because they're particular specifics of their day jobs and what they did, they all had a very interesting kind of hustle to it. And there were some people that I was like, man, you're awesome. I don't know where you fit in the film, but I promise you, if you come on this day at this time or whatever, I will find a way to incorporate you. So in Chinatown, there's this part with this Vietnamese woman who runs up with the watch salesman. She was not part of the script. All those lines, all the dialogue were 100% scripted except for her.
Wow.
So I was like, so here's an element. This lady was really great. I want to throw her in.
Wow.
Like, there you go.
That's great.
The other girl, there was a Chinese girl who runs up to the camera with the sunglasses. That was also like not in there. She was like, the girl chased me underneath the tables, like, and up and over everything, like in this casting room. So I was just like, cool, like I'll find a spot. I found a great spot for her. Another person, and actually one thing that was like a full scene that really came to life over this was the end scene when they're watching the violinists together, and they're watching these.
I love that scene,
nice little hustles happen. Originally scripted, like they had this conversation just getting off the subway on the platform, and they parted ways and went goodbye. So during the casting process, this guy came in and he had this violin. I was like, oh, do you play the violin? He was just like, oh yeah. I was like, cool. You know, it's like, I'm like, you wouldn't happen to have like a hustle that you would do with it? He's like, well, funny that you mentioned that. So he's like, I do this like swooning music. And these girls just like start grabbing all the money out of their boyfriends' wallets, and they get really pissed off, and they're like throwing me money. And he's like, I just kind of like seduced them into this whole thing, and it's really interesting. And he was telling this whole bit. I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Wow.
And I was like, man, this end bit, wouldn't it be great if instead of just them there having this conversation, there was another element behind it that was happening.
It's
so
amazing.
I created this scene, and I called the guy. I was like, listen, you got to be in the movie because I created this. I redid the scene based off of your story, so you got to come play like yourself. Like,
wow, so you've like chosen personal stories, but also existing like stories, and I love how you brought people into production because they just fit, and it felt so organic. It felt like watching all these different characters come into your film. Like it just felt like I was in New York City. It really did have that sort of feeling. But I think what's also great as well is that you kind of challenged your actors. You sort of put them in scenarios, and because when you're in New York City, you're a hustler. Everything's like go go go. Let's make it. Let's move it. Let's make it happen. And so you sort of gave them a sort of New York stakes, which I absolutely love. Now a director filming in New York City, not pretend New York City, but real New York City. What is that experience like? Especially because you're on the streets of New York City, it must be wonderful to kind of shoot in that city. I mean, my goodness, and difficult.
Well, I started in the when I first started really working professionally in the film business. I had a couple odd jobs and doing things like public access station, and then I worked in an editing suite post house downtown Manhattan, and I was just getting promoted to like an assistant editor, and I was like, right, this is fantastic. And this, these film runners would come in, these PAs like dropping off film cans, and I'd be like, man, I want to get my on-set experience. And I was just like, I'm gonna quit. I talked to one of these guys. I was like, can you get me a job? And the boss at the place was just like, what are you talking about? Like, you're going to quit this great job to go? And I got hired. I got this job as an intern. Like, so it was like, even if it was a PA, it was worse than a PA. It was like unpaid PA. And I was just kind of like, well, I don't care. So it was this movie called The Oranges. And it was like Allison Janney, a bunch of people. I'm not sure if the movie did like all too well, but it was a great cast. It was a great experience. I learned a lot. And those people had brought me on to, at the end of it, they're like, you're never gonna work for again. You really crushed it. And I took a huge risk doing this. And so they're like, so what are you doing tomorrow? I was like, well, I was planning to go to the rap party tonight and getting drunk, but that's not, I'm like, you got something for me. Like, I'm ready to do it. So the next day, they're like, well, come and show up at this time. So I am really nervous, and I show up super, super early. And I get to this spot in Greenpoint. There's all these containers stacked up super high and all this stuff happening. And I was like, God, this is a film set. Like, I don't know, like, what's going on. I'm like, damn it. Like, I'm just going to bad impression. I hope I'm in the right place. And I go around the things, 'cause I'm trying to find something to give me a tip that like I'm in the right spot. And I come around, and as I'm coming around, there's sand everywhere. And I see this old 1920s boardwalk set with these blue screens around it. And I was like, wow, this is huge, and it's really cool. And I was like, I guess I'm in the right place. I'm like, what is this thing that they got me on? And suddenly I turn around, and I felt someone was there, and Marty Scorsese was standing on the sand.
As happens, right? Yeah, of course.
And I was like, oh my God, like such in shock. I was like, what is this thing that this guy is like got me on? So it was the pilot episode for Boardwalk Empire. And
Amazing.
so I ended up working on a lot of the series and shooting for years, for like 4 or 5 years. I was like on the ground, shooting on the streets of New York, like really hardcore.
Tough life, right? Tough life, you know?
Yeah, and I worked on tons and tons of huge movies in New York and came up, got in the DGA as an AD, and like that was my whole thing. So shooting on the streets of New York was not like a new experience.
I love that you said all this, because I think I've certainly been an intern, and you feel like when you've taken those moves and like, okay, all right, I'm doing this, I'm going to do it for the experience, I'm going to absorb everything, and then when it can lead to all these great and wondrous things, as it should, but even just the learning experience in itself, it's such a wondrous experience, because it's really about understanding, finding connection, learning about the industry, learning about how to do things, and I think it's wonderful that you went out and said, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it happen, and look where it led you. It's brilliant.
And it's always like things like that, and those type of decisions, I think anyone can agree, they're like the hardest moves.
Yeah.
So like, wow, I've got something really nice here, and I'm going to throw it out the window, because the guy also too, like he said, they just gave me like a promotion at the post place. And he's like, what? It was just kind of like, I was like, man, I was really starting to make some good money, and I was like, I'm going to throw that all out the window to go work for free.
Yeah.
I was like practically homeless during this period of working for free on this movie. They gave me like a Metro card, and that was like it. I was like, thank God for catering, you know what I mean? I was like, I'll make it. And that thing led to, I worked on so many amazing films with amazing filmmakers, and met and got to literally, like, I sat next to my most favorite filmmakers in the world and soaked up as much stuff as possible.
That's amazing.
From them.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, I don't think there's a single filmmaker that I love that I didn't have the opportunity to work with. People are like, God, you've worked with like some of the best people in the world. I was like, I don't know if all of them would remember. Some of them definitely would, because but then it came to a point of like, well, great. So I'm spending all this time with these great filmmakers, but I stopped making films of my own when I realized that when I really started working in the studio system. Some of the time I was just like, man, I haven't made anything in a while. And I was like, I'm so busy trying to do this. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this was to learn how these crazy film magicians are doing it. And I realized there was no magic to it, you know what I mean? Like, and magic to it in the way of like, it demystified.
Yeah.
Which I felt like was super, super important, because I really thought everybody was going to be like, my first day on the big set, I was like, oh, everyone's going to be like this film, Einstein, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
No, so not the case.
Yeah.
Like at all. There was, of course, like there was a small group of people that were like the film Einsteins, like those above the line people. The rest of the people were just like, I just want my check and pay my mortgage on my kids. And I'd be asking everyone questions. I was like, oh my God, this kid, like, will you shut up already? You know what I mean? Like, stop and ask me so many questions. But they'd get it, and they're really nice, and people were receptive. And when I came to this realization of like not creating anymore, and I felt like my learning curve and what I was doing wasn't going to benefit me anymore as a creator. And yeah, I could have continued on that path, and I could be doing great. I mean, I'm like, the AD lifestyle is a very high paying and phenomenal one.
But you made a love letter to New York City, and here you are. So
yeah, but I left all that too. I threw that aside and was like, I'm going to go to grad school. I'm going to go to AFI, and I'm going to apply there. If I get in, I'm going to quit all this. So I was like, well, you're working film, you know how to make a movie. And I was like, yeah, but one thing I learned from these great people, there's something that they know that I don't.
And I love that. You don't ever stop learning. Don't ever stop embracing.
Have to be a student for life.
And that's such a
100%.
great lesson for life. What's next for you?
Currently, I'm in post-production on a Trump satire. It's like a political satire. It's really interesting. He's opening up. This is really phenomenal Trump impersonator. He's like world famous. John D. Domenico.
Oh yeah.
Does that. So he does this really, really great job, and we're just putting it together now. And what happens is Trump is opening up his presidential library / casino while still in office. And the funny thing about this is, when I tell people, I'm like, oh yeah, the premise is that he's opening up this thing. They're like, oh, where did he open it? I was like, no, it didn't happen. They're like, oh, that sounded like something that would have happened or did happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is so interesting that like they believe it as reality so quickly. And I'm like, no, it's fake, I swear.
Yeah. Don't forget bringing back the Trump steaks in the
oh yeah, of course. So he's opening up the thing and he has a stroke during the opening speech, and he goes into this this chromatic dream, and has a empathetic like realization. There's a catharsis for him, and it's funny because like the DP, who I knew for a while, I met him at AFI, was just kind of like, man, I feel a little weird shooting this because I hate the guy, and you kind of empathize for him in this piece a little bit, and I'm a little torn about about my work on this project. And I was like, well, forget the fact of who the person is and your feelings about him. We still have to treat him like a character. Yeah. So don't forget that for a second. So hopefully through this. This self-reflection that he has through this through this stroke about his own narcissism and about the American public also as being the true narcissists and the idea. Hopefully it can do some good.
I love it. I look forward to you posting it to the White House. That's going to be very exciting, and I'm very intrigued to watch that one. So please make sure you share. But no, listen. I love New York. I love New York. I love New York. I love New York. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you have to watch this film. It really is. It's wondrous. And I can't wait to see your next film.
Thank you.
And thank you for also sharing that. Listen, just go out there, get it. Never stop going for it, and make it happen. And never stop learning. So
never stop learning.
It's a great career. So congratulations. Cool. Well done, my friend.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.